In the Mysore Palace archives, quite accidentally, I came across the name of this lady called Gohar Jan. So she was, and the Mysore Palace archives are very well, catalogued
Yeah.
and maintained.
How did you access it? Firstly, were they very cordial in inviting you, a nobody, to
Yeah, it was
access these things?
it was difficult. I mean, small little boy in half pants, walking around and trying to, ask them details which they would not be willing to give. But I think again the Mysorean Kannada generosity and hospitality, slowly, I think that
Happened?
yeah, it did happen. Thankfully, I was lucky. So in that there was a little box file of the visiting palace artists who all came to the palace at various time spans. Now the Mysore court, as I said, was a amazing blend of all styles of various art forms. Like I spoke about the Bharatnatyam and so on, which was influenced by Kathak. There were, mudras and so on, which were drawn extensively from Kathak. There was something called a salam, this thing which, I mean, you don't have this in Bharatnatyam. So
Oh,
we do a
yes.
salam. So that is more from the Kathak style, which is done in the Mysore Shaili. So similarly, in the world of classical music, lot of Hindustani musicians used to come to the Mysore court. Abdul Karim Khan, Barkatullah Khan, all these people. And that's why on their way back to the north, many of them would stop by at Dharwad and Hubli and so on. That is how the Kirana Gharana came up there. You have all our Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, Gangubai Hangal, all of them who came up there. That's all on their return. So Kirana Gharana, which was literally started by Abdul Karim Khan Saab, he learned the Carnatic Shaili here with Mysore Vasudevacharya and others. The Kalpana Swaram technique that is done in Carnatic music, part of that was incorporated into Hindustani music, like sargams. Many Hindustani ragas were used in Carnatic, songs, which people like Muttaya Bhagavatar and others, set those kritis to these tunes. So among that entire file, there were probably 4 or 5 pages about this lady called Gohar Jan, and the caption said she was the first gramophone celebrity, the first dancing girl of India, and gramophone celebrity, and probably 3 lines of her biodata, that she was actually born of a Hindu grandmother, a British grandfather, an Armenian Christian father, and then how's this name Gohar Jan? So that also intrigued me. And then suddenly she was there in Mysore for all of 2 years, 1928 to 1930, and she died in 1930 in the KR hospital in Mysore. And after her death, there were so many letters of hers in that little file, which said, please don't reduce, don't cut income tax, increase my salary, this is too less, and all of these, and rejected, written by the officers of the Maharaja's government, and hospital bills and so many things like this. And I again don't know, Rashmi, what happened then. That again on a whim, I said, this lady, her story needs to be told. And I really didn't know how, because she was a Tawayef. She was the courtesan community. So no legal heirs, aage na piche, nobody. So, but then how to go about this? But I was, I don't know, seized by something, maybe by her, that, this is the person through whom my story needs to be told. And the next 4 to 5 years of my life, I literally chased her through the length and breadth of India, from Azamgarh, where she was born, to Banaras, where the mother and daughter, the Armenian Christian parents, they have a divorce, and then the mother, she takes the daughter away and goes to Banaras, where they convert to Islam. And the mother becomes this very famous Tawayef of her times called Badi Malka Jan, and the daughter becomes Gohar Jan. Then they go to Calcutta, which is where they live for most of their life. She's called also Gohar Jan of Calcutta. They become musicians in the court of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. And the most epochal moment of her life was in 1902, when recording technology came to India from the West, from London. The gramophone company, she became the first commercially recorded artist, and thereby, literally opened the floodgates of music and music recording for several artists later. So I chased her all these places: Banaras, Azamgarh, Calcutta, Madras, Bombay, where she had a live-in partner for some years. Then Mysore, where she died. I, in fact, went to the KR hospital masquerading as her grandson to to get a copy of her death certificate, which I managed to get,
Oh, yeah?
and that's there in the book's appendix.
Oh, wow.
She died very young, at about 57 or 58 years of age. I also went to the Kabristan, the cemetery, Muslim cemetery in Mysore, to see if there was a resting place. All the pre-independence graves were in one particular part of the cemetery,
Yeah,
but
where in Mysore?
I can't remember which area. It's called the Kabristan Committee, this thing in Mysore, and that's where we went. This was, I'm talking of 2007 or 2008.
Oh.
So, but we couldn't find her grave. Such a illustrious, the first recorded artist, a diva of her times, a superstar, totally dying in anonymity. I even chased her all the way to Berlin and to London and other places. Berlin, because the recording expert who came on behalf of the gramophone company, he was a German called Frederick William Gaisberg, and I went and managed to get hold of his diary, where he has copious, memories of how Goharjan, how she negotiated for for fees.
Oh, yeah?
She used to charge 3,000 rupees for one recording. No free recordings at all. So 3,000 rupees in 1902 we're talking of.
Yeah.
And
That's a lot of money.
what all she would come dressed in, and so many such fantastic his memories of how she sang and so on, that was there. Then her mother was a great poetess in Urdu. She'd written an entire divan called Makzane Ulfate Mallika, or the treasure trove of Mallika's love. Very poignant shares on love, betrayal, and the usual motif of a Tawaf's life. And that I searched all over India, but nowhere got. Only one copy, that was in London, at the British Library in London. So that also I got from there. So it was literally like putting together pieces of a jigsaw puzzle to reconstruct this life of this superstar who was, as I said, I mean, she was a diva of her times because she used to charge so much. She led a very hedonistic and a very feisty kind of life.
Nice.
It's said that every evening she would go on these horse rides in those ghoda gadi with those white stallions, 6 of them, and Indians were not allowed to do that. So once when she's going like this, there is the cavalcade of the viceroy which crosses hers, and he thinks, looking at her fair complexion, she's Anglo-Indian, and her jewelry and finery and goggles and all that, he thinks she's some Maharani or something, and then doffs his hat. She also acknowledges him and goes away, and later he realizes that she's a common Tawaif, and then she's called to the palace, and she agrees to pay a fine of 1,000 rupees, but continues to go on her joyrides. So that kind of a feisty lady. Her pictures would appear on picture postcards made in Austria. Power of technology, that it actually could traverse borders. A Tawaif in Calcutta being known internationally, and but with all of that, the narrative of a Tawaif's life, you fall in love with all the wrong men who cheat on you, and
We saw the Hira Mandi.
Hira Mandi, Umrao Jan, and all of that. And finally, she is reduced to a state of beggary. And that is when Nalvadi Krishnaraj Vadiyar hears about this, and he invites her as a court musician. And she comes here in 1928. By then, she's totally broken. So many court cases happening. Very, very dramatic kind of life, ups and downs. And that is where she dies so early.
2 years.
2 years.
She's there in Mysore.
And one doesn't know. I wanted to know the reason of death, whether she had committed it herself or it was something else, but couldn't get those details. But I think through her life, it was so important to put many things in perspective. One was, in those times, it was a time of acoustic recording or mechanical recording, where there were no mics like this to amplify your voice. So there used to be a big horn that was fitted on the wall, and the singer had to put his or her head into that horn and scream as loudly as you could. And depending on how loudly you screamed, there would be a stylus on the other end which would oscillate and cut etches on a shellac disc, the 78 RPM. And the length of each disc was only 3 minutes. So in 3 minutes, you had to make like pressy writing in literature, something like Indian classical music, where one raga alapane you can go on for hours together. So this woman came up with a formula as to how you could condense it into 3 minutes and also scream into that horn. And usually, Indian classical musicians, while singing, they tend to move their head and hand and all these things. That would affect the audio quality going into the horn. So there would be two agents who would hold your hand and one who would hold your head, push them into it and say, bellow hard. And so this is how these people, recorded. And great tribute to the women of this country, that when recording technology came to India, all over India, it was only women who recorded. Most of the men folk stayed away, saying, this is
because of all of
this thing. And they said classical music, it's almost like a bastardization of classical music. It is such a important divine art form. We can't commercialize it. My music will not be heard on some chai ka adda. It has to be heard in a proper concert with this thing, sacred. But these women, largely from the Tawayaf and Devdasi community all over India, they said, no, we'll see. This is a new opportunity coming our way to make our voices heard, and for us to enter homes which we can't otherwise, of respectable people. So Gauhar Jan was the leader of the pack, but there was numerous other women like that. There was Janki Bai of Allahabad, Zohra Bai Agriwali, Malka Jan of Agra. In our own Bangalore, Nagaratnamma from our city of Bangalore, she was among the early recording artists of Carnatic music. Salem Godavari, Coimbatore Tai, Dhanakoti Ammal of Kanchipuram. All these people whose names don't even strike a bell today in the minds of historians or classical musicians. Because in 10-15 years, the early recording was completely dominated by women. And the male musicians then saw what this was doing to their lives. These people are earning so much. They're becoming so popular. Their records are selling like hotcakes. So then the men do what they do. They come and displace the women. And by then you also had this whole anti-notch campaign, where any woman who is in the performing arts is dubbed as a prostitute and literally cleaned out of it. And so their stories, their names also were literally thrown into the dustbins of history. Their records are now found in chor bazaars and raddi shops. People can hear the voice, but you don't know who the artist is. So Gauhar at least was a superstar and celebrity, but numerous other such anonymous, women whose tender voices, I think if they did not enter that makeshift studio and record as they did that day, Indian music industry would not have taken this giant leap thereafter. So that book was it was a journey into the past, which unraveled so many nuggets of our history, our social and cultural life, and also the lives of women of that era.